Joining me tonight, I'm Johnny Robertson. We're live on What Does the Bible Say? And this segment, we're going to be discussing some of the events that are taking place locally. And the reason why we're doing that is because we feel like that it's pretty difficult to find remedies in the world today. And we have all kinds of civil unrest really all over the nation, and it's not anything new. It's not our political process right now, our political leader that's in Washington, D.C. It's not the past political leader that was in Washington, D.C. It is really a systemic problem that has been in the United States pretty much for the entire history of the United States, and it's not something that's unique to the United States. It's all over the world. In these particular pictures that you see behind me, you're basically viewing a demonstration down to the Danville courthouse, a protest on Monday of this past week, and it is in response to a police shooting. A young black gentleman was shot and killed, and as a result of that, individuals went to City Hall, which is their right, and began to protest the situation. Then the police released the video. We'll be playing some of that video. And the tide has turned somewhat. The judgment about what took place it's cooled down somewhat. Tonight we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be talking about it from a biblical standpoint. We're also going to be talking about it from the perspective of what part do religious people play in this behavior, and also we're going to dissect some of the thinking processes that we have. We're going to look at the Bible. We're going to see what was going on in the Bible days, and really we'll find a remedy. If we look hard enough and we move all of the verbiage and the posturing that takes place in situations like this, I mean, you always have special interests involved. I have footage where I'm just going to give it to Leonard R. Jones, the past president of the NAACP. We were in a city council meeting. Leonard, behind the scenes, was actually pointing out to Mike Elder that generally it's the case that persons in power, particularly this time white people, that it falls into their agenda to keep the black people actually arguing with each other while they go ahead and spend the money while no one's looking. You get all this noise taking place behind the scenes, and individuals can just go on with business as usual, and it suits them fine. A narrative is out there, nobody's watching, and folk just go on with their regular behavior. You know what? I'm saying my hat's off to Leonard R. Jones. That's exactly. Now, why is it that individuals can't see that really fits the narrative? If that is the case, everybody's squabbling and, a lot of noise going on, and individuals behind the scenes, they can pass something, you don't even know it. I mean, we had a situation where a movie was presented called Wag the Dog. And what really was going on, Bill Clinton was under all kinds of scrutiny. Next thing you know, they're dropping bombs on Iraq or maybe Kuwait. I can't remember how that went. But what was going on is make a lot of noise in Kuwait, and you get the scrutiny off of Bill Clinton and the problems he's having with Paula Jones or whichever one it was. See, it's a very common technique. Leonard R. Jones was trying to tell Mike Elder, look, you got to look past this. We can't be squabbling with one another, and we can't be having all this going on. The white folk just doing their thing. And it's not just white folk. It's all over. Individuals in different countries. So tonight we're going to dissect some of that. We may get a chance to look at an event or two, pull up some video from the past, but we are going to tonight, for sure, we're going to discuss some individuals that are players in this that are not actually persons that truly have an agenda that suits the black community. Now, I'm in the process of trying to get some individuals together. We have a great platform in this two states area for individuals to talk unfettered. Now, what does that mean? Do you know it's the case that oftentimes the right person cannot get to the podium? You ever seen a situation like that? Let me give you this illustration. When you churn milk, let me tell you what comes to the top: cream. We're churning right now in this area. Got race problems going on in Danville. We got civil problems going on in Danville. We have no one knows who to trust. You got churning going on. Who's going to come to the top? Here's the question. Do you want the Nation of Islam to come to the top, to the podium and speak? Individuals who are avowed haters of white people. You want the KKK to come to the top, to the podium and speak? Avowed, I mean, they try to pretend that they're not opposed to the black community, but they are. They basically are a white supremacist. They believe that they are the lost tribes of Israel. They hate Jews. They say that it's the white people that are really the lost tribes of Israel. Not true. So you see, who's going to come to the platform? And oftentimes, individuals that you need to hear from can't get to the platform. And you know why? The powers that be. I mean, just right here at the station. I'm not taking a dig at Charles's station because he's given a lot of people the voice, but you don't really know sometimes when some small guy, some small voice out there is in fact the voice you need to be listening to. Case in point, Martin Luther King. Were they letting Martin Luther King come to the podium? Absolutely not. They were trying to shut him down everywhere he went, and come to find out, he ends up being the individual that helps the situation. So that's my question. Who is the person who needs to come to the platform? On what does the Bible say? We have 3 hours a week on this local broadcast, live television, phone lines open, and we're trying to bring together a platform. I'm saying I know personally individuals that are the head of the East Coast KKK. Did I say that I'm close to them? No, I said I know them. I can actually ring one of them up. The Mr. Martin that used to be up here when I had cancer in 2011, he's dead now. He was the head of one of the chapters or whatever. I knew him. He talked to me on the phone on different occasions. That didn't mean I was propagating his propaganda at all. I'm just saying, I had his ear. He said he watched my program all the time, and before he died, he admitted that he was wrong about what the Bible said about mixed racing. That is, mixed marriaging. So, over here on the other side, Malvester, I'm going to play you a clip here in just a minute. Malvester wanting to be on the program. Now, here's the question. I don't mind Malvester being on the program, but the question is, once we hear from him, is he the person that needs to mount the platform? Is he the person that can remedy this situation? Now, I'm going to make a plug for the Church of Christ in this area, and that plug is, you go around this town and you show me a group of religious people that have been able to cross the racial lines and be a mixed congregation. I'm going to tell you what you find. In any situation, what you generally find out in the denominational world, in the white congregations, you'll find a token black person or a black family. Token. Basically, somebody who is assimilated for some reason or other, and it'll just be token. Same thing in the black churches. You might find a token Bob Lawson. He used to go in and visit with the black churches, and he touted himself as able to go anywhere. That dude isn't accepted. He's a token. What I'm talking about is a functioning interracial congregation, and not just token this or that. Basically represented to the demographic of this area. It's 60-40 is what I understand here in Martinsville or Henry County. That's what the congregation is in Martinsville, 60-40 demographic, just like our city. How do we do that? We're practicing New Testament Christianity. And so, folks, that's what we're talking about here. So tonight, you see that the phone lines are open. We just saw the buzz replay. You know what's going on in the area. And so let's get right to it. What I want to do tonight is I would like to play a bit of the, was that played during the buzz tonight? The actual footage of the shooting? Yes. It was on the buzz? Okay, I was listening to the buzz on my phone. Okay, I'm going to play a bit of this, and I know that it could be the case. I'm just going to say to you, before we start the video, if you have children in your, especially here in this area, if you have children, I wouldn't suggest that they watch this. My own self, I have never seen a live shooting. I may have seen something that I've forgotten about, but I don't think I will ever forget this. As I watched and I knew what was coming, I just wasn't ready for it in any sense of the word when we finally saw the police open fire.
Okay. Robertson is my name.
Johnny Robertson.
Johnny Robertson.
You know what, when he comes...
Hey, do not reach! Do not reach!
I may come with him.
Johnny Robertson.
Show me your hands!
I may come with him.
Johnny
Show me your hands!
He come, I may come
Show
with
me
him.
your hands now!
Jehovah's Witnesses were racist.
Let me see
Mormons
your
were
hands!
racist. Presbyterian Methodist, United Methodist. All
Let
of them
me
had
see-
to apologize for their support
Now-
of slavery. How can...
I got something else
There's a
calling?
book out there called The Beginnings of the Bible.
Okay, hold on. That's it. All right, thank you. Here we go.
Dispatch, shots fired, shots fired.
You know, honestly, I thought there were more shots. It just seems like it was shooting forever the first time I saw it. And, you know, one thing about our broadcast here is this is streaming live over the internet as well. Our YouTube viewers are tuned in at this point, and we're basically allowing them to see what we deal with in our area. And then number two, I want you folks who are watching on YouTube, especially members of the Church of Christ, you don't see this, you don't see a broadcast like this ever. I have people all over the United States calling in to me. I'm talking about into my private phone. One gentleman called me yesterday from Tennessee, said, I've never seen any kind of program that has this level of Bible teaching in my entire life. And his dad is a preacher that has already passed, I'm saying 40 years ago. He was around here in this particular area, by the way, when Lowell Altizer was a preacher over in Collinsville and on the radio in this area. Never seen a program like this, a religious program that is dealing with the intense things that go on in our community that would even begin to touch the race issue, and especially the way we're going to touch it tonight. In the Church of Christ, we've had debates with the KKK. We're trying to get in touch with Eli James again, or one of the a better representative of the KKK, as far as having a discussion with one of their top representatives. And I'm not talking about a grand wizard or whatever. I'm talking about one of their preachers. Also, we're saying we've debated the Nation of Islam. We've debated the real black Muslims. When I say real, I don't mean any disrespect, but they say, the Nation of Islam says that the regular Muslims are not the real Muslim. Their Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the real Messiah. So they say that the ones over in the East are not the real thing. So we've debated all those sects, and even the new Nation of Islam from Detroit, Michigan. So that's the kind of thing that we're getting into, and we're asking ourselves the question tonight. This is really the overreaching question. Is this the individual here behind me that we want to come to the platform? And so tonight I'm going to give you a reason that I say no. Now, I'm not saying that I would not talk to Malvester. I've tried to send a message to Malvester today on Facebook. I don't have his phone number. You don't happen to have it, do you? And we were trying to let him know that we were going to be talking about him. Now, this is not going to play. I'm not playing the debate. I actually have a video footage from last week with Malvester Muhammad in front of the new, what is that, Firehouse Sub in Danville. He and a gentleman that said he was from Charlottesville, Virginia, they are talking to me. Malvester begins the conversation, and then Mr. George Bates calls himself Reverend Dr. George Bates from Charlottesville. He gave me a card that said that he was from Morehead City, North Carolina. I can't find him on the internet, so I'm not sure. Came here to do a speech, I think, having to do with Martin Luther King. He joined the Ministerial Alliance here. Malvester is a member of the Ministerial Alliance. Now, that's just crazy. A guy from the Nation of Islam who doesn't believe that Jesus even died and raised from the dead, doesn't believe anything, basically, that Jesus said about being the Son of God. This gentleman is in the Christian Ministerial Alliance in Danville. That shows you what I'm talking about tonight. Is that really who can represent you? Do you want the Ministerial Alliance? My understanding is the Ministerial Alliance actually saw this video before the public did. Now, that is quite interesting to me, that the Ministerial Alliance is actually able to see something before we do. Did they get to pass on it? Did they get to determine that this suits us as far as representatives of the black community? I can tell you the Ministerial Alliance does not represent the black community. Now, what you might say, well, how do you know that? Listen, these young guys that are having trouble in the community in Danville, they're not listening to pastors. In their mind, pastors are just like them. They're playing the game. Pastors are gangsters. They're crooked. They're out. I'm saying that's what these guys say, and I agree with them. I mean, I'm not making that allegation for this station, but I'm just saying they're fooling around with women on the side. We've seen how many of them. I could just start calling a list of her name right here that you know that has happened. These young guys see this. These young guys see their mamas going to church year after year and giving all this money to these pastors who are gaming just exactly like the guys on the street, and they don't trust their mamas either. Now, that's the reality of it. And I'm not saying it's any different for me. I didn't trust my mama when she sent me to Sunday school And the state trooper that was teaching my Sunday school, I went to work for him hauling hay, and the dude's cussing out at his farm. He's dipping snuff and he's smoking cigarettes. Man, my mama wore me out for dipping snuff and smoking cigarettes. And my Sunday school teacher's doing it. I stopped trusting my mama right then, and I started looking for a way out. That's exactly what's taking place right now. So do we want a ministerial alliance that is in alignment with Malvester, Muhammad, the Nation of Islam? And by the way, Malvester does not represent the Nation of Islam in this area. He is not the imam in any one of their chapters or whatever they want to call it. He does not represent, but he is always out there. You know, for some reason, when I think about it, I want you to think with me tonight. When I think about the Nation of Islam, I tell you, I cannot conjure up another picture for a representative, another imam that is really an imam. The only one I can think of that was on Charles's station in Danville one time with the sheik, and that guy was the real imam for the Nation of Islam in this area, and he said the sheik was a clown. Now, I can't remember that guy's face. You know why? Because he's not out. I don't even know if he's around anymore. The real representative of the Nation of Islam in this area, he does not have a presence. Malvester has eclipsed him, but the Nation of Islam won't own Malvester. I have that on tape. They have told me from the headquarters that they don't know who Malvester Muhammad is. I may have said Dixon. I apologize a while ago. He wants to go by Malvester Muhammad. Who am I to deny him the claim that he is Muhammad or connected with Muhammad? But listen to this. What I want to show you tonight. Just a week ago, I have Malvester demonstrating that he's a glory hound, that he is a person who on the one side of his mouth, and he knew I was taping, he knows I always do. The gentleman that we're going to be hearing from in the rest of the clip, Malvester told him that I was taping, so Malvester knew that I was taping, and if Malvester would pay attention to all the verbiage that he puts out, he should have remembered that he said one thing at the beginning of this, and then he turns around and crosses himself, and you be the judge. I've made up my mind why he does it. You be the judge. Let's take a listen.
That's scripture.
Okay. I heard what you said. Now I want to ask you a question about just like our business, me and you. Why is it, Malvester, that you don't trust us to have a dialogue on TV where we actually give you, we don't have to mess with Jessica Griffin, we don't have to mess with Bob. You know, when Bob is on between me and you, all Bob's trying to do is make TV.
Yeah, but Johnny, I seen you.
Not in a debate. Not in a debate.
With the sheik from Dan.
Yeah.
Not sheik. Not sheik. I'm talking about the imam from Dan.
Okay. I gave him uninterrupted time.
But you jacked him up, Johnny.
No.
At the end, you jacked him up.
See, you know he rode home with me. He rode to the station and rode home with me.
I bet y'all had a hard time.
No, we didn't. Here's what happened. When we came back home, he said to me, Johnny, he said, you tricked me. I said, I forget what his name was. I said, I told you like 3 weeks ahead of time what the show was going to be like, what channel to be on, and you didn't watch. That's on you. He didn't watch the show.
See, I know you, Johnny.
Do you know me that I would not give you uninterrupted time?
I know that you're going to take advantage of the power that you have over the show.
So how many debates? I had 20 debates, Malvester, and every single one of them, like one of these guys that I debated could come in here right now, he'd sit down and have a coffee with me still. And here's why, because except for Richardson in Martinsville. Richardson lied about his own contract. He wouldn't even give me, he'd sit there for an hour and never let me speak. Everybody else.
I missed it.
J.C. Richardson? Yeah, J.C. Richardson had me sign a contract that we would have equal time.
See that.
I'll give it to you on DVD. Yeah, he's the only person who lied
I'd like to see that.
and abused his power. And I knew he was going to do it, so I bought an hour behind him and then went on and answered it by myself.
I know you. You are very aggressive. You are very aggressive, and you are going to dominate.
I wouldn't give you the time that I promised you.
You will dominate.
Do you think that?
You will dominate.
Are you headed out? How you doing, sir?
Hey.
Hey.
What's that?
Oh, you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Y'all together?
Yeah.
You going to introduce me, Malvester?
Reverend Dr. Bates.
Johnny Robertson.
Johnny Robertson.
Yes, sir.
You heard about him, haven't you?
What's the connection? What's the connection?
What was the
Yeah,
minister?
now he's taping us.
Huh?
He's taping it.
Tomorrow?
No,
No,
man.
that now, yeah.
Why?
That's what he do.
No, here's the thing.
Johnny, we got to
Okay,
move on.
good to see you, my best.
All right. Call me. Email me.
Robertson is my name.
Johnny Robertson.
Johnny
You
Robertson.
know what? When he come, I might come with him.
Johnny
You
Robertson.
know what? When he come, I might come with him.
Johnny
You
Robertson.
know what? When he come, I might come with him.
Johnny
You
Robertson.
know what? When he come, I might come with him.
See, the Jehovah's Witnesses were racist.
Okay, now, let me set a little bit of that up. We talked for 27 minutes, and eventually Mr. Bates, Reverend Dr. George Bates is what he calls himself, from Charlottesville, Virginia, he actually asked to be on my program. The more we talked, he said, I believe I'd be interested in coming on the program. Now, you heard Malvester say at the beginning, Johnny, I don't trust you. You'll dominate. You're controlling. You're aggressive. But then when he found out that Reverend Dr. George Bates was interested, and it sounded like Mr. Bates had heard of me. I don't know if he really had or not. Some people just said my name has a ring to it. This guy may never heard of me at all. But once Malvester found out that Dr. Bates was wanting to come on, did you hear Malvester? Now you be the judge. Why is it that a guy says that I will not keep my word in a debate and allow him to have uninterrupted time that I promise him and him be able to go through it? Why would he say that I don't do that when you, the community, have seen me do that with several different denominations, with the Pentecostal, United Pentecostal International, which is one in Godhead, just like Early Dillard and Donnie Dodson. Also, we've done with different kinds of Baptists, Baptists here in this area, Baptists over in Reedsville, in Danville, in Martinsville. All of these individuals don't have any gripe. Now, they have a gripe about the fact that they weren't able to answer what we said maybe, but one thing they don't gripe about. I'm saying even the guy who lately tried to work this station over, which would be Brian Edwards, while that was going on, do you know he had coffee with me? And I asked him, I said, Brian, why is it that you're doing this? He said, the law has been broken. But we're still in there talking. And I'm saying I debated him, and we still have coffee. And the only person that has ever had any kind of situation with me in a debate is J.C. Richardson. And everybody who saw that debate know that he lied about his own contract. He had me sign a contract which has never happened before. He didn't trust me, and he got going and never let me speak. I didn't trust him either, so I had already bought another hour in case he did that. Now, even Malvester wants to see that. He wants to see somebody else put me in my place, is what they said. But I'm saying tonight, you be the judge. Why is it that Malvester, on the one hand, will say, I don't want to be on your program. You wouldn't be fair. But then Reverend Dr. Bates wants to be on, and Malvester all of a sudden says, let's hear it again. Now, you just be the judge.
That's what he do.
No, here's the thing.
Johnny, we got to move on.
Good to see you, Malvester.
All right. Call me. Email me.
Robertson is my name.
Johnny Robertson.
Johnny Robertson.
You know what? When he come, I might come with him.
Johnny Robertson.
You know what? When he come, I might come with him.
Johnny Robertson.
You know what? When he come, I might come with him.
Johnny Robertson.
You know what? When he come, I might.
You know what I always heard when I was growing up? He said he might come with him. I always heard mites are on a chicken. It took him 10 years to debate me when he actually said way back there in 2001 that he would debate me anytime, anywhere, and it took him 2 years to back it up, and then we still didn't have a debate. We had Bob Sharp moderate. I'm not pushing down on Bob, I'm just saying, Bob is a TV host, and you got to have the show moving on, and they have a mindset of exciting TV as opposed to getting information out. I'm saying the religious community wanted to hear me and him actually array the positions. Bob wanted to keep the TV show going. So basically, it was a referee for Malvester. He was looking bad. He still will not meet us on a regular platform where he gets uninterrupted time. I'm basically saying to you that Malvester can't go for 30 minutes. We do our debates 10 minutes each. I do 10 minutes. I let him start. He does 10 minutes. I do 10 minutes. He comes back and he does 10 minutes. He can answer me, put on new equipment, new information, whatever. Then I answer him for 10 minutes. Come back, he has 10 minutes, and then I answer him for 10 minutes. That's 30 minutes apiece in 10-minute segments. I don't think he has 10 minutes of information, and that's why he won't come on. Then the other segment, we open up the phone lines. We let the community call in, and they asked us both questions. We do not screen the calls, and I don't know if he can handle that or not. That might be the problem. You know I can handle that. We don't ever screen our calls, and we have plenty of debates. We let individuals call in. Then in the last segment, what we do is we ask each other a question. He has a minute to ask me a question. I have 3 minutes to answer his question, vice versa. We do that, and we end the show, if that's the time frame that we have, maybe an hour and a half. Does Malvester have a real hour and a half in him to be able to put forth, if that's what the problem is? But I'm saying, given what you saw tonight, here's a man who said, I don't trust you and I won't be on. But then he finds out that the other guy wants to be on, and now he's saying, I might come on. If you do that, I might come on. Well, you know, I say that he's interested in the fact that somebody else is going to get to speak, and he's not going to get to have his voice in it. Well, I'm saying tonight, phone lines are open. Why is it that Malvester won't come on anyway? Now, if I'm able to set this up, you think about this. If I'm able to get a representative from the KKK to come on the set and Malvester won't come, what does that say about his position? You've got an opportunity to talk with the KKK. You've got an opportunity to, I'm talking about, ask them any question you want to. They may not answer. I can't make them answer. I get to ask both of them questions, and if he won't show up, I'm going to say already that we know that Malvester has said he's not going to show up in something that I'm involved in because I dominate. Well, if the KKK comes on, I think the only thing that Malvester will be able to say at that point is that, well, maybe Johnny's a part of the KKK. That's how he got him on. You know, he calls it tricknology. He'll figure out some way to make it look like that he didn't need to be there. But I'm saying, when you see other events throughout the city of Danville and Martinsville, who do you see? Malvester. He wants to be in the limelight. Well, what if we could actually figure out a way to get individuals from the KKK to give in? I'm saying to give some ground. Now, I've already told you, I have on tape Mr. Martin from the KKK that has already passed. I have his wife admitting that he told me that he changed his position about what the Bible says about whites, blacks, or anybody else intermarrying. He used to say it was unbiblical. We did enough programs and demonstrated that all that business that people are talking about from the time frame of Noah, he had actually bought into that, and it wasn't true. Why couldn't we be able to make some headway in a segment where we sit down and talk? Here's the question. Is he one of the community leaders, or is he just an individual who has an agenda, who, while everybody's busy with all the noise and the verbiage, he goes on about his business, which, what is his business? You see, I'm quoting Leonard Jones now. Leonard Jones is the one that said that while everybody's fighting with each other, some individuals, he said the white folk go on about business, making their money, getting the money. Well, are the white folks the only ones doing that? Could it be that Malvester is involved in this too? I can't believe tonight that some of the people that are associated with Malvester have not heard the program and haven't told Malvester that we're talking about him. I don't remember ever having a show where we were talking about him like this for this length of time that he didn't call in. So here's my challenge, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to get some individuals that are willing to talk. Now I want you to think about this. For about 22 weeks, we did a show here that the station sponsored called Headliners. During that 22 weeks, we had Tony Jones basically as one of the constant participants. I was constantly participating. Why is it that of all of the persons in the community, Tony Jones was the only one willing to be on the Headliners and we dealt with everything you can imagine. We dealt with Troy being a homosexual coming out, ex-Marine, person who didn't like me. We had Larry the atheist on here. We had Mr. French. I'm not sure where Mr. French was from. We had Phil Gardner on the show. The Sheik came on the show. I mean, it was just every conceivable side of society. Sean, what was that girl's name that we had on? What was her name, Charles? Kara. Was that her name?
Is that now?
The girl that we had on? Kara? Yeah, I mean, we had, that would be generation, the millennials telling us why she didn't like the older community and how that we were judgmental and didn't let the young people do what they want to do. We had every conceivable side, persons from the crowd that we could get to come, basically come on and speak and tell us why we're having problems. Now, here's the question. We have a platform. I'm not in it for the sensational. I'm not trying to make it exciting TV necessarily. We're trying to get at the roots of the problem. What really is the root of the problem? And so tonight, I want us to go into the Bible here for a minute, and we definitely need to make sure that we cover that aspect, because if we don't get into the Bible, then who really is going to be the authority? I mean, at the end of the show, you don't want to say, well, we listened to Johnny, and he did some psychology, and he brought in this spokesman from Harvard University and things of that nature, and we don't get down to what most of us actually respect. Now, in that tape that I had a while ago, Malvester called himself a true Christian. So even Malvester at least gives lip service to the Bible, and that's what we want to hear from tonight. We want to at least look at how things were. Now, I'm just going to ask this question. Is there anybody, I'm saying anybody out there tonight, that will say that the persons in the New Testament are not representatives of Christianity? I want you to think about that. You don't have to take my word for it tonight that I'm a true Christian, that the Martinsville Church of Christ is the true church that you read about in the Bible. Okay, just drop that. Would you agree tonight that it is the case that the persons we read about in the Bible, now we can trust that they are true Christians? Will you trust that? All right, let's break it down a little bit more. Let's make it a little narrower. What about Peter? Is Peter, who are we talking about Peter? Apostle Peter. Is he a true Christian? What about the Apostle Paul? Is he a true Christian? What about Barnabas, the traveling partner with the Apostle Paul? Is he a true Christian? I don't know anybody, even Malvester, that will deny that those individuals were followers of Jesus Christ. Even Malvester will deny that Jesus Christ is the Christ, but he won't deny that those men were followers of him and believed that he was the Christ. They are the individuals that Jesus used, that Jesus picked, and I don't think anybody will deny that they are in fact true Christians. Well, guess what? They're the best of the best. The apostles are Jesus' hand-picked best of the best. Guess what? Racism. Oh, was it racism? Is it really racism? When you really get down to it, is it always racism? Could it not be privilege? The idea that I have privilege and I find myself in this position by birth, it's not anything that I necessarily did. I came into the world, and right now, in the world from 1700, 1600 forward, in America, this continent, white people were in a position of privilege. Now, some white people were more privileged than some other white people. Some people came over here as indentured servants, and they were just as lowly esteemed as individuals that came in from Jamaica and different places that were brought in here as slaves. So, privilege. The white people came in, were here first, the Indians were here first, but the white people had more technology and they were privileged. Could it be that rather than just inherently white people don't like black people, that it's the idea that some are privileged and some are not? And you know what, folks? It has always been the case. Any historical document that you can find, as old as you can go back, people in privilege have never given up privilege to anybody else for any other reason than when you get to the New Testament, and some individuals would give up privilege because they believed that God had actually offered His Son privilege. In Philippians 2, 1-5, it actually says that Jesus did not think it was robbery to remain in the position that He was equal with God. But He made Himself a servant willingly. Privilege, decided to give up His privilege to redeem mankind and teach them that kind of principle. That's the only time that you find it where it was perfectly practiced. Everywhere else, if people will put that in their heart, in other words, true Christianity, follower of Jesus Christ, they will try to stop taking privilege to the point that you're trotting over other individuals. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm supposed to take all my privileges and give it to you just because you're downtrodden. Now, see, you've started acting in a way that shows that you're not really worthy of giving that over. I mean, no person who has privilege is supposed to have to give everything to another person who's downtrodden and make them equal. That's called communism. And guess what? Communism never has worked, because somebody's got to be in charge of communism, and they're generally crooked. I mean, the communists that we know of, They're very dictatorial and they destroy their own people. Jesus is the only individual. These are the only individuals. Now let's read. We're in Galatians chapter 2, and we're going to read the best of the best. We're looking at them as true Christians, and you ask yourself, what is wrong? Are these people not examples for us? Is it not the case that God left this record of these individuals who are supposed to be our examples? Well, let's watch them. This is Galatians 2:10. Only they would that we should remember the poor, the same which I was also forward to do. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed. Well, what's he doing? Let's stretch this out a little bit. This is verse 11. When he came on the scene, Peter came to Antioch. I had to withstand. This is Paul saying, I had to withstand him to the face. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. You telling me that Peter, the hand-picked, one of the closest associates of Jesus Christ, is involved in this kind of behavior? Well, what is going on? Well, in fact, Jesus removed the stigma. Are you following me? Don't forget that. Jesus removed the stigma of being a Gentile and the privilege of being a Jew. When Jesus left this earth, let me drive a peg here just a minute and set forth a principle. When Jesus left this earth, he left a Magna Carta. In Mark 16:15, one of the last things he said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, that he believeth not shall be damned. Every creature. Wait a minute. Gentiles, we're going to preach the gospel to the Gentiles? They're creatures, aren't they? That's what Jesus created, an equality for all men. But look here. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was blamed. Well, what was he doing? For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. Here we go. Privilege. In the Jewish religion, circumcision is another word for just saying that you were Jews. You're basically Orthodox Jews. You're individuals that Peter had grown up with, the religious group. They were also a theocracy. They were a ruling party within the Roman government. The Roman government let them rule. They had their own rulers. They had 70 of them and then a high priest. And those individuals then dictated what went on. That's the civil strata under which Peter was raised. When these individuals then came from Jerusalem with James, it says he withdrew and separated. Why? He withdrew from who? He withdrew from the Gentiles. Do you mean to tell me that Peter's heart had not been penetrated by the truth of the gospel to the degree that he could actually treat a Gentile in the same fashion, eat with him, that he would a Jew? That's right. Now, I want to ask you this. Are you accusing Peter of being a racist? Is that what Peter's problem is? Is he a racist? You see, Peter was raised thinking that being a Jew meant that you were actually in a position closer to God than anybody else, which is not true. It never was true. The beginning of the Jewish race harks all the way back to Abraham, and Abraham wasn't circumcised. Originally, he wasn't a Jew. He was a Gentile among many Gentiles. So how is it that the father of the faithful of the race of the Jews wasn't even a Jew himself? And all a Jew just means is it's short for Judah. It begun to be called that because the tribe of Judah was what was recognized by the nations when they were having wars, and they called him Jew. Now, are you saying that he's racist? No. This individual is a nationalist. He has his national pride about being a Jew, and it is not necessarily racist. It is a place of privilege, and even Jesus' own doctrine has not penetrated this true Christian's heart. Can he remain like this and be saved? No. That's what Paul's doing here. Paul is one of the highest of the sect of the Jewish race that there was at the time. He was a Pharisee. He was taught by one of their famed teachers. He was known to the high priest. He left the high priest with papers where he could go out and slaughter Christians. And then he was converted to Jesus Christ. Jesus' doctrine of teaching persons that are in a position of privilege to treat others with love and equality, which does not mean that I have to give you everything that I have and bring you up to a common positioning and now practice communism. That's not what that means. But it does mean that you give them the opportunity to be saved. You treat them as a brother or a sister in Christ. That had penetrated this Jew of renowned reputation, Paul, formerly known as Saul, to the high priest. This gospel, this teaching had penetrated his heart to the degree, watch what he did. He actually withstood one of the major apostles to his face who was not allowing this gospel of love and treatment of kindness and trying to help your fellow man. He rebuked him because that penetration had left him somehow or other. Because Peter originally was involved with the Gentiles, but when his peers came, you see him, when his peers come on the scene, he starts acting just like the rest of the Jews. And one man who did have the love of Christ penetrating his heart withstood him to the face and basically told him that he was to be blamed. Let's look and see how this goes. Now, here's my point. Listen, folks. Do you hear other preachers talking to the community like I'm talking to the community? All these white folks that won't open up their churches and behave themselves in such a fashion as to allow a black man or a black woman or black children to be comfortable, they don't have the love of Christ penetrating their heart. That's just all it is. The black community, vice versa. If you can't open your heart and make individuals from the white community feel comfortable and try to get to know each other, I just said the key word right here. The problem that we're having, folks, is not necessarily that we don't like each other. Mankind, just as human nature, we go the way of least resistance. That's just the way people are. And can I tell you that oftentimes when you don't know a person, you're not that comfortable with them. Black, white, yellow, brown, it doesn't matter. It takes some doing to get to know someone and become comfortable. Now, you might say, Johnny, what makes you so smart? Well, for one thing, I've lived in other countries, and I've had to study culture and culture shock. You get into a culture and you don't know how to behave yourself in that culture because you weren't raised there. You know what happens? You make mistakes. You feel uncomfortable. You actually begin to feel oftentimes that you're doing things and you're hurting people and you don't even want to. And a lot of times a missionary will go home in 6 months because something will happen in his psyche. He'll become so frustrated without being able to handle his day-to-day duties because he doesn't know the comfort zones. He hasn't learned this culture that he determines that he doesn't even like these people. He and his wife will begin to talk about their habits and their behaviors and start saying things of a slurring nature and disliking them because you can't feel comfortable. And the people in the country, they don't know what to do because you're an American. You're raised American, you act American, you're loud as American. You know, you want privilege as American. You expect people to move out the way on the bus. You expect the bank to lay down and at your feet, make sure your money is cashed. And when you don't get that, you just get all huffy and set off the alarm. Micah set off the alarm one time in the bank while Lori's trying to get our finances in order while I was out of the country. Frustrating. You go home. Why? Culture shock. You think we don't have culture shock here in this nation? We have several different cultures. Let me just ask you if you're black. Are you over in the Mexican community helping them out? Are you doing a community service in the Mexican community? Why not? Well, man, have you ever been around them Mexican kids? What happens when you're around the Mexicans? Their kids are wild as a March hare. I'm quoting here. This is what people say. Do you know that Mexican kids are no worse than white kids or black kids? Well, why do they run around and you'd see them? Well, somebody says, there's a Mexican church right beside us. And the kids are all over our property. They climbing on everything, just all over the place. Why do they do that? Something wrong with them. There's not. You know what it is? In their country, they don't have boundaries like you do, like we do. Nobody owns anything. In most of the peasant areas, the very poor areas, nobody owns anything. Everybody running all over people about boundary. You cross my yard. That's my hedge over there. That in a third world country, none of that stuff exists. It is often common ground. Somebody else owns all of it and you're a sharecropper. And people don't act like that, and their kids are all over the place. Oftentimes they'll have 8 or 9 kids and they'll have one room and everybody's living in that one room. Let me tell you this. If you have 6 or 7 kids and you live in one room, you will learn to tune kids out. And once you do learn to tune those kids out, and you go into an American's house and they're running all over the place, or an American church building and they're running all over the place, all through the building and everything, you've done tuned that stuff out. It don't bother you. But the Americans are like, what in the world? We're in a zoo? Straighten them kids up. And you know what happened to the Latino community, the Mexicans? They basically freak out because, what's wrong with these white folk? We didn't do anything. You see what's going on? Culture. You have to learn a person's culture. You have to love first. If you don't love somebody, you're going to dismiss them. Keep them Mexicans away from me. Or if you're white, keep those black people away from me. If you're black, I don't see black people that own businesses. Oftentimes, you go into a business that is black owned. The Sprint business that used to be up here on 58, I used to have Sprint. I quit going over there. I didn't feel welcome. What was going on? I don't know. I don't know that it was that I wasn't welcome. I don't know. I didn't feel comfortable. You see what I'm saying? It's on all sides. You have to have the love of Christ. Don't tell me something's wrong with me when we're sitting here looking at Peter. Peter is a hand-picked individual of Jesus Christ, and at times he was not able to overcome his own peer pressure, the advantage and privilege that was associated with it, that was being offered to a Gentile race that was generally looked at as dogs. He had offered the gospel of salvation to them. As long as he was there with them, he was fine. But when his peers came on the scene, the love of Christ was overcome by his own basic cultural norms. All of us have to deal with it. I don't care who you are or who you think you are. You are not really any better at this than any of the rest of us. It is a job you have to work at. Now let's bring in special interest groups. We got some individuals, they love it this way. As long as they can keep one crowd down, guess what? That crowd actually will work cheaper. Let's start at the bottom. I'm not really sure who's at the bottom, but we all know that the Spanish people are working for cheap. Keep them cheap. Keep them down here low. You see, you've got special interest groups. They don't care anything about race one way or the other. It's all about dollars. It is within their agenda to keep one group of individuals low because they work cheap. Well, let's move in the black community. It's in their agenda to keep them at a lower level because then they will be able to be paid cheap. Regular white people like me, I'm not even regular white people. I'm stigmatized because I'm a felon. You see, as long as you can keep the idea going that all felons are, man, you can't trust a felon. I had a member of the church found out that I was a felon. He said, well, at least you didn't rob anybody. Man, I aggravated robbed somebody with a gun. See, I am a felon, and I'm one of those persons that you can't trust. Keep that stigma going. Guess what? I'm going to actually not get a job that somebody else is going to get paid to do. I'm going to have to take it for cheaper. Why? Because I'm stigmatized. See, special interest individuals, they're in the business of keeping this stuff going. So, let me ask you, who can you really trust? Who talks like I'm talking tonight? Have you ever heard a preacher say the stuff that I said? Have you ever had anybody just go through that little process about the Mexicans running around everywhere? No, you wouldn't dare hear somebody say that. I might offend somebody. I'm not worried about you being offended. I'm worried about teaching. This is just basic sociology, but you don't get to hear it. This is common sense, but you don't get to hear it. Now you tell me, why is it that the love of Christ has not penetrated our hearts to the point? Why is there not someone like Paul in your basic family group or in your religious group? Well, I'm going to tell you this. You might think this is a bit, you're probably going to think, well, he's so arrogant. But I'm going to tell you this. This is what Paul said to me, and he said to you. Be you followers of me as I am also of Christ. I'm trying to be like Paul. And if I'm going to be like Paul, I have to say what needs to be said. These folk out here that are representing the religious groups do not have the love of Christ penetrating their hearts. They are not willing to speak up about the behavior. You hear any of these preachers talking about Malvester? Put him in the ministerial alliance. Are you out of your mind? This dude doesn't even believe Jesus raised from the dead. You don't have sense enough to put him out from the individuals that you can actually trust, to have Jesus penetrated his heart. Well, who does he follow? Muhammad. What does Muhammad say? Kill the infidel. What are we talking about here? That's why Malvester is not going to come on with me, because we're going to get into the Quran. Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he wrote a book that is a message to the black man. Muhammad is the head of Islam, even for Malvester, and he said, kill the infidel. He don't want to hear that. He don't want you to know that Muhammad actually is not mentioned in the Quran as many times as Jesus is. What? The book that spawned Islam, and Jesus is in it more than Muhammad? See? And we're talking about real Muslims have obeyed the gospel. Upon learning that, they began to hunt. What went on and happened after this? Well, Peter is said to be afraid, and the other Jews dissembled likewise. In other words, they acted just like everybody else. See, that's what's happened. We start having confusion, or we start having problems, and everybody wants to be, we want to party up. Well, I'm in the white crowd, I'm in the black crowd. Is that really, does anybody not have the sense that we're talking about right here in the Bible? Do you not have the sense to basically back away and say, now wait a minute, is it really going to do us any good? Just take this for instance. If you're a minority, is it really going to do any good for the whole minority group to line up against the majority? Well, what do you expect to get that way? Minorities cannot line up and expect to overcome a majority. I mean, what are we going to do? Arm ourselves? Going to have a civil war? Is that how this is going to work? That won't work. We've already had that once in our nation. That didn't work. That's not going to solve our problems. Politicians are not going to solve our problems. Special interest groups who want to keep the strata the way it is. This group low, paid cheap. This group low, not quite so low, but paid cheap. Another group paid cheap. Then you get on up here to tenured individuals that's been around for a long time, and they get the most pay. Well, the corporation know how to fix that too. They kill the corporation, and everybody's retirement is gone, and they lay off all these people, and they start all over. Special interests. It is not the answer. Now listen. The other Jews dissemble likewise with them, insomuch that Barnabas was also carried away with the dissimulation. But when I saw that they walked not according to the truth of the gospel, I said to Peter, before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of the Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? Now see, you're going to have to look at that more than once. Basically, he's saying, if when the Jews are not around, you are living after the manner of the Gentiles. That's what Peter was doing before the Jews came from Jerusalem with James. He was living like a Gentile. He was eating with them. He was involved with them. He offered the gospel of Jesus Christ to them. Why? Because the love of Jesus Christ had penetrated his heart, and it had overcome his advantages, his privilege, and it had created a different spirit in him where he wanted to offer to his fellow man. Even though his fellow man was less privileged than him, he wanted to offer his fellow man his hand of fellowship and to offer him a chance. But when the Jews came back on, man, you see how hard it is? It is hard, y'all, to overcome things that have been taught to you, your own culture, and then you start having other people come around that are not about to try to mix and mingle with other cultures, and then they start making it even harder on you and saying you're an Uncle Tom, or you just, you know, people say the N-word and you're a lover, stuff like that. And that's what causes people to pull back from their open-handed, loving ways, trying to bring the love of Jesus Christ into that situation. Notice what he then says. So here's the question, Peter. If you're a Jew and you were living like the Gentiles before James and these other Jews came, and not as a Jew, why are you compelling the Gentiles now to live as Jews? Why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do Jews? You see, what the Jews from Jerusalem with James are doing is they want the Gentiles to be circumcised. And when they came, Peter is actually now saying, along with James, y'all need to be circumcised. Y'all need to put off Gentile behavior and you need to take on part of Judaism. Well, he said, don't you see he's being a hypocrite? While they weren't there, he was saying, okay, it's all right to be a Gentile, and I'll offer you the gospel of Jesus Christ. You're my brother. But when the Jews came around, he said, well, no, while we're at it, we need to circumcise you and have you live like a Jew. Well, which one is it? See what we're saying here? This has to be a lifelong pursuit. And folks, we have to be working on purity in our own heart. We have to watch special interest groups. Now, let me tell you another business about some special interests. You'll have individuals that will see Christianity create a giving spirit. And you know what you'll have? We have it all the time. As I said, the Martinsville congregation is a mixed congregation. We have all, black and white, watched black people, white people come in and try to take advantage of us because they know we have a giving spirit. I'm talking about burn us good. Thousands of dollars have been given to individuals who take advantage of our Christ-like giving spirit that wants to help our fellow man. That's a special interest group. They come in and they prey on weakness. They think it is weak to be like Christ. Man, I use this word, a ferret. That's a little animal. That dude can actually find stuff. I ferret out. We watch and we ask questions and we try to figure out who's a fake, who's a fraud. Because the last thing you don't want Peter up in here if he's got a heart like this. And see, sometimes we don't even mean to, but we go back to our own ways. Why? We're comfortable with our own ways. You know, it's hard to learn a gospel. It's hard to learn a totally new way of life. It's hard for white people. It's hard for black people. It's hard for Latinos. It's hard for Asians. It's hard for everybody to put aside what we were taught from the cradle up and start acting like Jesus Christ. But you can do it. We can all do it. I know we can. Look at you got to have somebody who's willing to stand up for the truth. You have to have somebody that's willing to be like Paul. Now, you just ask yourself the question tonight. Who do you know that is like Paul in this particular setting? Is Malvester the individual that we want to come to the platform? I'll tell you another individual that I'm talking to that I actually have the ability to send him a private message and get a response right away. Chad Martin. I wouldn't have Chad Hall come to the platform either. He's over at BTW. Special interests. Individuals claiming that they can do miracles, heal sick people. You know that's not true. Making money over there. Chad Martin. He's an individual that I actually talk to. He's an individual that he has a platform, has come to the microphone. You see, you have to ask yourself the question, who is the person that will cut through all the verbiage, call a spade, call a special interest group, a fraud, and actually say, I'm willing to try to make this work? Well, I'll tell you one thing. You visit with us in the Martinsville Church of Christ, you will actually see individuals who are having it in practice. In the congregation there, it's not any token this or that. We have individuals who are from Peru. We have individuals that are from Cuba. We have individuals that are Texas, persons from Texas. Caleb is a citizen of the Marshall Islands. You have individuals from the black community from every different direction. You have an individual in the congregation that was the last man standing at a rally or a picket for the NAACP back in the 60s. If you wanted to see the guy who was the most dedicated when everybody else quit picketing a racist group of individuals that wouldn't serve the black community, you can come see him. He assembles with us, but he does not have that mentality. I don't know really what had to change in him. A mistrust maybe for white people in general. There are white people that are sorry, no count, bad. They will take advantage of you. They are fakes. I don't trust them. There are black folks the same way. There are Mexican folks the same way. There's people that way everywhere. There's people and you know what? They are not necessarily inclined that way. You know, you learn certain things. I used to be on the streets. You know, I've been in the penitentiary. I learned how to get by. I learned how to connive. But that doesn't mean that I'm intrinsically that way. My mother tried to teach me the gospel of Jesus Christ, the principles of Jesus Christ. And the question is, where are you going to be taught that in this area? I know that you'll be taught that in the Church of Christ. And that's why we're doing our programs, why we continue to do them. And tonight, there's my cell phone. You can call me anytime, night or day. And if you want the truth, you always have to ask for her. What's the Bible say? God bless you. Good night.